The Hangout is on the air. Welcome, everybody, to this special edition of Comic Book Addicts called What is Batman? This is Sleepy Reader, and I've contacted my two favorite Bat-obsessed YouTubers. We've got Luke, BatmanVideoReviews.
Howdy.
And we've got Joshua Hayes, also known as Bat Josh.
I'm Batman.
He's very scary.
Or Bat Josh.
So I thought we would talk about kind of what is Batman. Right now, Batman is not Bruce Wayne, and Bruce Wayne has brain damage, or his brain has been repaired, so he doesn't remember the traumatic things that made him into Batman. And I thought there's various levels of what is Batman, like what does he symbolize, what makes Batman Batman, and obviously everyone will have a different opinion, and looking at different eras of Batman or different versions of Batman, you get a different sense of who he is. But shall I plunge right in and say what I think Batman is symbolically right now, what I'm thinking of him as? You guys up for that?
I'm waiting.
Sure.
Bated breath.
Go.
So I think that Batman is the ultimate male, at least maybe American male. He's what deep down we feel we should be. Obsessed, unstoppable, with all the great toys, and the passion to do right and to do that one thing well. I don't ever live up to that. And it's probably not healthy, but I feel like that's kind of a male ideal in a way. So there's that. That's what I've been thinking of Batman.
He's the alpha male that gets a hall pass for being in a bad mood, which is like the perfect male. You know, no woman to impress. You know, nobody good side to be on. Just getting the job done. You know, it's like you have the hall pass. Here, I'm in a bad mood, but here's why. And this is cool. I'm still awesome at everything.
Maybe that's Maybe that's why I have a problem with the James Gordon as Batman. He's not alpha enough, and he's not obsessed enough, or something.
Yeah,
Well,
you know.
I kind of look at him. Go ahead, Josh. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Luke.
Okay. I kind of see him as, you know, the perfect person. I mean that is, look at it, what his peers are. I mean, they're all gods. He's just a normal man. But if you take that normal man and you take, you know, dedication, hard work, you know, peak physical conditioning, you know, education, put all that stuff together, you could almost be godlike in a way. That's probably the worst way of kind of saying it, but he performs to the same level as the gods. It's only through, you know, that work ethic and whatnot that he's able to do that. It's very unique. No one else can do that, at least not to that level that he's able to.
Yeah, there are defining characteristics that make the character unique. That is indeed one of them. The fact that he's human, the fact that he's mortal, flesh and blood, and all truly and permanently, although in comics nothing's permanent, but figuratively speaking, as core attributes of the character. Getting back to what you were saying about Jim Gordon and about, you know, who is Batman, or what is Batman, what defines Batman. When you hear the term Batman, first of all, you kind of have to differentiate. Fans go around saying, I love Batman. They don't necessarily mean I love the brain. You know, I love Batman, all the characters, all the mythology that goes into the setting. That includes Batman as a character. But if you're talking about just the man himself, I kind of view it like this. I view that there's only one person who can do that. There are a few people who have been love Batman on some level or another, maybe not perfectly, and then there are a number of wannabes. Because there can only be one the Batman. You know, the Batman, he's the man who's killed, born from tragedy, completely focused in on justice and the protection of the against superstitious, cowardly criminal lot. And he's the only one, you know, Gordon included, Valley included, Dick Grayson included, who reaches that pinnacle of human perfection in all of these ways, but that also has that same brooding attitude to go with it. Then there are people that have become Batman. You know, Dick Grayson doesn't have a brooding attitude per se. And then it kind of comes down to Batman defines the of the reader, the view of a criminal in Gotham City, the view of that. Like, it gets so, like, you know what I mean? It's such a...
We're losing your audio, Josh.
What's that?
We're losing your audio.
No.
Now I hear you when you lean forward. It seems a little better, but I think it is mostly the Wi-Fi problem.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry about that.
My speech got cut off.
You probably said the most brilliant thing when the word went out. No, but you didn't go completely out. It was just a little hard to hear you towards the end there. It's funny though. I wonder if
you have a good point about the whole thing. You know, people there are a Batman and wannabe Batmans. You know.
Yeah.
That was a good point.
And I love the term the Batman, both because it's singular and it kind of brings him back to this mythological character that to the criminals. They're not sure what he is. He's the Batman. He's not. His name isn't Batman. He's a thing called the Batman that just comes out of the night at them.
Right, and it goes back to when you're defining Batman, you define it through the eyes of the reader or the criminal. Because let's look at Dick Grayson. He was Batman prior to the New 52. And Scott Snyder's Mirror and Tony S. Daniel, I think, was writing Batman at the time. Dick Grayson, through the hearts of criminality, playing the role of Batman, Dick not being a brooding figure, but understanding that the role he's partaking in when he puts that cowl on, wants to embody that. Criminals who still had fear in their hearts when they saw him prove it down, he is the Batman to them, and so to us as the readers, the full package. He is, you know, in Batman and Robin Volume 1, when he's going up against the Circus of Strange, vulnerable, Alfred there telling him, you don't have to be Bruce, just be your Batman, but there are still certain things that tells. So, to the reader, Dick Grayson isn't the Batman, he is a Batman, doing a better job than most. But to the criminals in Gotham, he's a Batman like any other. Because he was so closely committed with Bruce Wayne, he pulled that off better.
Right. If the criminals still believe it's the same Batman, then the fear that's been instilled might still work for a while with someone else playing Batman. I assume that the criminals don't think the new Gordon Batman's the same person. And that seems a problem for him, perhaps.
And I think it's one of the points in the books. I don't know they come right out and say it, but I think it's... No, they do. It's very well understood in the books. Past and other interesting perspectives. It's on the news waves of Gotham City, deputizing Batman. So, yeah, I would have to think that they're well aware that it's not true. Or, well, obviously, they're well aware it's not. They don't know it's true. You know what I'm saying?
Right. It's not their It's not the Batman they used to know.
Well, you know, you can tell Catwoman definitely knows it's not Bruce just by reading that last Catwoman issue.
Yeah, I would think she's not fooled for a second. I haven't read Catwoman, but obviously she would have a sense of who he is.
She literally goes from, not to spoil, but she literally goes from being chased by the Robo-Batman straight to the homeless shelter where Bruce is right there. So,
wow.
Just kind of...
Does she know who Bruce Wayne is? I mean...
we brought that up last night. We were thinking, during the New 52, Josh, if you know, if anyone knows, you know, does Selina know Bruce is Batman in the New 52 era?
No, not to my knowledge. It's sort of like the Jim Gordon thing. And if somebody wants to correct me, feel free, because there are issues of Judd Winnick and Ann Nocenti's Catwoman run that I have not read because I couldn't bring myself to it. But as far as I know, insinuation is that she doesn't.
Yeah, but she did know who he was pre-52. Is that correct?
Oh yeah. Yeah, Hush. Oh yeah.
Yeah, in Hush, I remember her seeming to know who she was.
As a matter of fact, yeah, in the book Hush, he unveils himself
Yeah.
to her in one of the final issues.
Right. I thought I remembered that. I just wasn't 100% sure. Anyway, yeah, that's one of the flaws of the New 52 is what is canon and what isn't anymore. It's so unclear. But the whole thing with my feeling of like why Batman is who he is and why I like Batman so much is undercut by the fact that the first Batman I loved was Batman 66 from watching reruns of that show. I think that was the first superhero I ever encountered in my life. So
Hey, guys.
then he was just the costume in a way. Sorry?
I'll be right back.
Oh, okay. What was your first Batman, Luke?
My first Batman, believe it or not, it was right when the Michael Keaton Batman kind of came on. Now I remember. Well, first I guess by default would be the animated series. That would be really my first kind of continuous kind of exposure to them. Then I remember my dad coming home from work one day saying, "Here's bought us the VHS," and from there it was like kind of game on. So right around that era, 66 Batman, I kind of jumped on way late, obviously because lives.
Even I was after the fact on 66.
Yeah. I would say recently. I mean, until recently, it's just it's been relatively recent jump onto that.
And so, I mean, with the animated show, that's a really good version of Batman, in my opinion, to have as your base Batman. I don't even understand why the 66 version worked so well for me, looking back on it.
Yeah, because it's definitely a total different Batman. It's like 180.
Yeah.
And maybe it's just, I don't know. It's just a different take on it where you can just kind of get a different perspective, enjoy, and get a chuckle, which is good to have every once in a while.
The one thing that, even though they were all silly, that is true from Batman 66 to all the other versions of Batman is the crazy villains. And so I wonder if part of that was my initial appeal to Batman when it was just 66 for me. That, the Joker and Mr. Freeze and Egghead and all of that, even though they're much lighter versions of the kind of villains you see in the comics or in the later animated show, they still capture that, Batman the relatively sane one amongst all these crazy
And it's kind of like me learn like a language and dialects, but they all kind of mean the same thing, but just sounds different. Maybe that kind of maybe that's a bad analogy, but just the 66 Batman is just another dialect of the Batman language, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, and one of the appeals of Batman that I don't think they play up that much anymore is the idea that the Zorro aspect of it, that you're this somewhat effete millionaire who no one would ever suspect is this brutal creature of the night kind of thing, which in some childish way they play with Batman 66.
And oddly enough, you kind of mentioned I'm actually reading this the Batman Volume 6, which has that Zero issue where Batman is like right when he's going up against the Red Hood gang, and there's that reference that Gordon mentions with Bruce, talking about that maybe there's a tie between this vigilante and Wayne and being caught up in that whole billionaire status and whatnot. And that tie was just literally, it's funny. I was reading that tonight. It's just that's a cool little thing what you were just saying there. And that you see, I think, pretty much everywhere. I mean, the animated series, and then Capullo and Snyder's run on that. And obviously, 66 totally different take on it because it's just a well-known fact, But
can you hear me, gentlemen?
There you go.
Oh, you sound much better.
Oh, good. Good to hear. I was hoping that this might work, this effect here. I took the liberty of grabbing a recent issue of Batman. I don't know that it'll give us a final answer on whether or not Catwoman knows his actual identity, but I had an inclination that the direction the writer went in this issue might give me some answer to that. And it's this one right here. It's Batman and Catwoman, which is Batman and Robin number 22. And I couldn't remember in this particular book if she meets up with him in the Batcave or elsewhere. And the reason that was important is, number one, they meet up elsewhere. Batman's in the Batcave when an alert goes off that she's on a bridge, and then he goes to meet up with her. But then I thought to myself, well, if she knew it was Bruce Wayne, in the pages of Catwoman, she's basically saying, you know, I need to find Batman. She would start with Alfred, I would think. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I think those two things combined gives me a lot more confidence that it is indeed that she doesn't know.
So, but she has slept with him and stuff in the New 52. Right?
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that.
But not with the mask off, I guess.
Yeah, as I understand it, in Judd Winnick's first or second issue.
Right, they do the naughty thing.
Yeah. She could do like Monica Lewinsky, Bill Clinton, you know, identification of Batman, but that's about it. Not a very good reference for the kids. I apologize. Shouldn't be up this late anyway.
Right. Yeah, Batman in a sex life is somehow hard for me to absorb in a way.
Oh, but
even with
you got classics like the bear. Who was that? The Neil Adams one. You got the bare-chested.
Right.
Back in the day.
And he had a relationship of sorts with Talia back then. But
yeah, the classic Neil Adams pose with him coming into the tent with his hairy chest, getting ready to take out Ra's al Ghul.
Yeah, if you want to know what Batman is, that's a different type, I guess.
Well,
hey, it's one step up from Bat Nipples.
Times, right? I mean, Burt Reynolds was your ideal man back then with his hairy chest.
Trying to think what else was fashionable at that time that would be funny on Batman, like a big old stash, or a, you know, like maybe some zebra stripes. I think were like in the '80s, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, so never mind. I digress.
A while ago, I was trying to read some Marshall Rogers era Batman. I forgot who the writer was at the time, if it was Steve Englehart or Doug Moench or someone. But Batman was almost like Spider-Man. He was very talky and neurotic sounding and stuff. That really upset me. I blanked out those kinds of Batman that are too neurotic or something.
You know, before we move on from Batman 66 too,
yeah.
I guess I kind of want to throw out my thoughts on it, because I hear a lot of the time people saying I hate it because it's not Batman. And
right.
That's fine. I mean, subjectively speaking, like what you want to like. That's all well and good. Objectively speaking, and just looking at it from a global perspective, if you picked up a comic in the 60s, the Comics Code Authority made it so difficult to tell mature, what we would consider now modern tales. It wasn't just Batman. Everything was campy. But a character like Spider-Man, that's a much easier transition. A character like Superman, American truth, justice in the American way, it's a much easier transition. With a character, you know, born from violence, dark, brooding, it is a much more difficult transition to make, to adhere to this Comics Code Authority and basically give in to the Silver Age camp that was happening everywhere. But if you look at the Adam West Batman series, even though it isn't Batman we know today, the Batman we respect and are comfortable with today, there were still elements that were there. He's still the alpha male. He's still a great detective, even though his machines are doing 80% of the work. But how those machines get there, who knows? You know, maybe he has a Lucius Fox in the background that we're not sure about. you know, there were still key elements of Batman there, but it was just skewed in the scope of the time. And if they had done a Punisher series in the 60s, it would have been a Silver Age Punisher series. Everything at that time had to adhere to that Comics Code Authority, which made it impossible to tell mature stories.
Digitally, the other day, I was reading a Batman from, I don't know, late 1940s, and it was so like the TV show. I think Robin even said "holy something or other," and the Penguin's evil scheme was a restaurant where he was forging people's signatures. He started a restaurant with rich people, and and Batman rescued the Penguin from jails to find out what his secret was. It was everything like the TV show, even from the late 40s. So,
There's an episode.
If you look at, you're right about that. But look at the time that was in. That was sort of, I mean, the stuff we read today, you would never. I mean, back in those days, that's just socially. I'm not gonna say it's acceptable now, but horrible. You're slightly removed from Prohibition at that time. You know, it wasn't too far away from the 40s and whatnot. So I mean, you got to almost kind of put yourself at the time period, like Josh was saying. It's just, you know, different norms and different stuff like that. So.
And maybe on a childish level, it did contain those elements, as Josh is implying, or a lot of the elements that still are there, but just in this immature, campy way. Because to a kid, Batman does seem tough and tougher than the villains, and that he is uber competent and he has his shark repellent or whatever. He's ready for every situation. So, in a way, maybe there is a certain amount of consistency if you dig deep enough.
Adam West has said about multiple times, you know, the way he played the character. It was tongue-in-cheek, but he would often steal screen time from Burt Ward. He was trying to make his characterization as alpha male and as sexy as he possibly could, given, you know, the script that he had to work with. So, I mean, there are definitely elements that should have bled through just based on the way Adam West describes performing the character.
Right. Even the Batusi to a small child is not a joke, but in fact, he's the coolest dancer in the dance hall.
I still think he's the coolest dancer. I do the Batusi, you know, aside from the Carlton. That's the only thing I got left. You know, I might stir the pot, or I might do a little bit of the bus driver. You know, you have your hand on the wheel, and then you open the door type of thing. But, you know, I don't have too many dance moves. I got the Carlton and the Batusi, so let's not down the Batusi.
Which I was so glad they put that in that last issue of Batman 66, by the way.
Which issue was that? I can't remember.
The last one, the one with Poison Ivy.
Did he do the? Yeah, he did do the Batusi.
Real brief. It was only like one panel, but yeah.
Explaining it to my daughter. Well, I wonder how many times they put the Batusi in it so far. I think he did it twice in the show, but it's very memorable.
I don't remember the second time that he did it. I mean, the first one, I think everybody remembers that with, was it Julie St. John? What was her name, the actress that he was with in that first episode? It was Hyde Diddle Riddle.
I can't remember the actress at all, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
I was looking at clips online of Batman dancing at one point to show my daughter, and I found 2 different episodes. I think it might have been something with King Tut in it, maybe, where he does the Batusi. I'm not sure now. Where he does it again. You'll have to research that, Bat Josh.
Yeah, I suppose I will. Oh, very good.
But yeah, I don't know if... I wonder what the writers think Batman is. But I'll never know. I mean, we can look at interviews, but...
Yeah.
They probably each
they're
come
so
in with
different,
their own version of Batman, which is confusing when multiple writers are writing Batman in multiple books that we're reading at the same time.
Especially when they can be so good too, you know. Like Tomasi has his own voice, which is totally different from Scott Snyder's, which we'll just leave Bucciolato in his own little corner. But I mean, Parker definitely. They're all different voices, but they're all good and they all work, but they're not the same. But they are.
Right.
You always hear the writer's voice a little bit in there too. It's inevitable.
Right.
You know.
Yeah, I feel like Snyder's Batman is a little more of the Boy Scout because Snyder himself is more of a Boy Scout kind of person. I don't know what kind of person Tomasi is actually, but I've never heard an interview or read an interview with Tomasi. Heard lots
He's
of interviews.
pure hard ass.
Oh, really?
I don't know.
He beats up the interviewers before they get to ask him questions. In a way, there's less mainline Batmans right now, right? There used to be 3 main titles. Now there's just 2. I guess Batman Eternal and then Batman and Robin Eternal take up that slot in a way.
Yeah, we lost Batman and Robin to Robin, Son of Batman. We lost The Dark Knight. So we have Batman, we have Detective, and then everything else is Batman, Superman.
Okay.
Right, Batman Superman, I don't
counts in that. But otherwise, everything is kind of an offshoot of that Gotham universe, you know,
Right.
for better and for worse. There are some, and I think it's one of the huge reasons that whenever DC reveals its bankroll for last year, they have a $2 million loss, is they're publishing, and I think this is true of comics in general, I think that they would benefit majorly from having fewer titles and not more. I think there's way too much dilution of talent, and I think there are so many unnecessary books. They need to cut the fat and just get back to good, solid storytelling across 20 or 25 titles a month, with their best creators being the ones that are getting paid. And some people will say, oh, then fewer jobs for creators. Well, that's tough, you know? I mean, it's a tough industry to get into, and if there are fewer jobs, step up your game and take one of those positions. But there are just too many books being published. With the comic shop, we're ripping, I don't know if you guys know this, when you over what's the word I'm looking for?
Over order?
Over order. There we go. When you over order and undersell, there is a list that is released to the comic shop every week of books that can be sent back for reimbursement. And those books get destroyed. And I got to tell you, half of the lineup, half the books we get in, we're ripping the covers off of because they're just titles that nobody picks up.
I didn't know that many of them were returnable.
There are normally, I'd say, about 8 to 10 titles a week that are returnable.
Wow. So, well, I completely agree with you. I think they'd be much stronger if they did just 25 titles or something like that. But I imagine that they're fighting for shelf space with Marvel, and they feel that Marvel will gain on them if they don't have enough books out. That's my guess.
Marvel, you know, they're going to make their money through their cinematic universe, and I understand that. But isolating that and putting it aside as a separate business prospect, Marvel may take up the shelf space, but when DC's profit margin's better than Marvel's, they're going to be happier than Marvel is.
Right, but I wonder if they worry that they will actually lose sales if there's just less DC Comics populating the shelves like Marvel will push them out. I don't know. I've heard talk of publishers in general putting out material that most people think is crap because they don't want to lose their shelf space. Not just in comics, but like in book publishing and such.
And maybe they just need to decrease their, I don't know, the number of books that they're printing then. I mean, it's definitely a back and forth debate because on one hand you want the shelf space, on the other hand there's way too much dilution, and I do believe that if there were 20 or 25 issues, if you could buy the entire DC library every single month and you knew just from the sheer number of books that the best creators were on those titles, I think their sales would actually increase exponentially.
Well, it would be interesting to see if you were right, if someone did that. I mean, I do think they could be more focused and stronger. But it just doesn't ever seem to go in that direction.
Speaking of always which, more.
I know both of you are going to, because you get everything, are going to get Batman and Robin Eternal. But are you looking forward to it, Josh? And then I'll ask you.
I have to say that I don't have the list of creators in front of me. I don't know if you, Luke, have access to your books where you're at right now to pull out the recent advertisements. I suppose I could just pull it up online, but I'm being super lazy right now.
Seeley again, and of course Tinian and Snyder and
Valentine's in it. Let's see. I don't know if Seeley's still doing it.
I think Seeley is still doing it. Yeah, Valentine's is
Tony-
a new person in the Eternal mix. That might be interesting.
I'll call it cautious optimism. And the reason I'm going to call it cautious optimism is that I feel like the first Batman Eternal probably should have been done in about 26 issues instead of 52. If they had cut some of the fat out and just kept to the story and kept it focused, I feel it probably would have been about 26 issues long. So with that goal in mind, and I would almost, I mean, I know they're doing 26 weekly issues. I would almost rather them do 26 bi-weekly issues and make it a year, but just have. But with that said, they're going weekly, and that's fine. The fact that they're condensing it down, I hope it's not just half the story of Eternal across 26 issues with just as much fat. I hope they're condensing it down. I did see a couple of creators on the list that weren't there for the Eternal process, so I'm hoping with some of the feedback they got from Batman Eternal, I'm hoping, you know, the wheels were already moving in the direction that they were in Batman Eternal. You know, once you're 10 or 15 issues in, you can get all the feedback you want, but you already have a course mapped out in 52 issues, or at least a number of issues. I'm hoping they take some of that feedback that they've received, or hopefully should be looking for, and it's better.
Yeah. Well, obviously, I hope it's better. Well, what are your thoughts upcoming to Batman and Robin Eternal?
I'm very excited for it, and I think I have a better Eternal experience than some, and that's fine. I understand the gripes and criticism we had on Eternal in the first place. I look at it kind of two perspectives. First, I enjoyed the series. Did it have its bad points? Absolutely. I think the whole point when we had the Gotham, the Rogues Gone Wild, if you would, at that point, it was totally unnecessary, but it kind of is what it is. I would like to see Scott be a little bit more proactive in the actual scripting other than just kind of like just the roadmap.
Great point.
But what I loved about Eternal, and I'm looking forward to in Batman and Robin Eternal, is just how we all kind of interacted. Like every week, I know I look forward to watching Josh's videos. I've watched your videos and your thoughts, and just how it kind of got everyone kind of talking on a weekly basis. If there is such a thing as a water cooler Batman production, whatever, it was Eternal for me anyway. It was every week. I just knew guaranteed there was 3 or 4 people, get their 2 thoughts about it, and I do my own videos, and it's just how we all interacted. That is what I'm most looking forward to with Batman and Robin Eternal, kind of getting back to that. Now, big guarded optimism, I agree to. I'm hoping we just kind of stick with some core people. We don't need the who was it, Gillian March, issue number 11, Batman Eternal. I forget the name, but just we know we want to introduce some new creators.
Yeah,
writers.
Gillian March was not the creator you hated. I think Gillian March is closer to the more standard. I forget what his name though was. Ian something. Ian Bertram.
Ian Bertram.
That's it.
Yes, yeah. Him. But I mean, we keep it to the core folks, and maybe kind of give the artists, if we can, 2 or 3 issues at a time, rather we're not having issue with one artist and jumping. Because love him or hate him, like Tony S. Daniel, can he write? No, but in my opinion, but I think he's a great artist. He has a great touch for Batman. I would love to see long issues like we have with Dustin Nguyen early, and Fabok and Eternal. Give the good core folks we have, kind of give them some space in the run. I'm hoping that happens in Eternal. Will it happen? I don't know, but I just went off on a total tangent. I'm sorry about that.
That's okay. It was a fantastic and very enlightening tangent, I must say. I was just going to mention, you mentioned the various artists, and with a character like Batman, because we all go into this fictional universe so pre-exposed and so comfortable with the character, I feel like you have a little bit more liberty for creative or artistic changes within a single storyline versus like fiction that you are not already established in or that hasn't already been built up over years and years and years. For example, I know you read Omega Men,
Yes.
Sleepy Reader.
Yes, I
The art change this week really threw me off. And there was another book where there was an art change. I can't remember what it was. It was an independent title, and I opened it. Oh, Midnighter. It wasn't ACO. That threw me off because every time ACO does the artwork on that title, it's breathtaking. Every time he doesn't, I read through it. I don't know if it's just ACO's artwork and storyboarding, but the script feels a lot more flat to me whenever he's not doing the work. So that threw me off. There was also an independent title where they had a guest artist in, and like I said, I can't remember exactly which one it was.
Was it Wicked and Divine? I've heard people complain about that.
Well, Wicked and Divine's another one where they have not the established artist coming in and doing the work, and that threw me off. And because they're not characters I'm used to yet, so the tone of the series is so defined by both the writing and the artwork. Whereas Batman,
Right.
okay, whatever artist is on board, we know Batman. We know the tonality of the character. Now, yeah, it's the artist's job to convey that and to do it well. But we still adjust for what we're already comfortable with. Whereas when you have books where you're trying to get comfortable with the characters, those artistic changes really make it difficult
Right.
to stick with the story.
Good point you mentioned with Eternal was Bard. Never looked the same in the whole entire run. He just no consistency with his character design.
Would have been wild if they would have said he's actually Clayface and you just can't remember what you can't remember what he did the first time. But
Right. But you make a very good point. Batman, because of his longevity and how much most of us can bring to him, even when we haven't read many of his comics yet, he has some weight, some gravity to him that makes his character stick and land much better. Our artists and writers can do a lot of different things with him, and it still kind of feels in the core of Batman. With my own anticipation of Batman and Robin Eternal, I'm kind of going with the theory that I've heard someone say that, well, this time Tinian, who seems like the one really in charge, will have had the experience of the first one and will maybe be able to do it better this time. And so I'm kind of hanging my hopes on that. I don't think Snyder's going to be any more involved. It would be nice if he were. And I do like the idea of just 26 issues rather than 52. Sorry, Josh?
And I always look forward. I always looked forward, like Luke said, to the water cooler talk, so to speak. With a monthly title, it's a monthly title. You're not getting another dose for another 30 days or more, depending on who the creators are. But with a weekly series, every week on the dot, that Wednesday, we all know there's at least one thing in common that we all have in our hands each and every week. And so, yeah, that's definitely something I'm looking forward to, making some more trips down to the Bat Basement for Batman Eternal.
The old Bat Basement.
Hopefully it doesn't follow me into the Bat Basement this time. I know you liked it more than we did, Luke. I don't mean to be facetious.
That's alright. It's all good.
Well, I liked it more than you did, Josh. I'm closer to Luke. There were points where it got really weak, but I kind of liked it by the end. Which is another reason that gives me kind of hope, but with Tinian perhaps taking the reins and doing a better job this time. The thing that makes me most nervous is I feel like I read somewhere that this is leading up to a War of the Robins. And two things. A long series that's just meant to lead up to something else is annoying. And I'm not sure what I want with a War of the Robins. I don't see that going anywhere too exciting to me. But I'm not reading We Are Robin.
The less it has to do with We Are Robin, the better. Ugh.
That's a title where it's like I mention like every time it comes out. I want it to do good, and for just some reason, I know Josh, you're more descriptive and why it may not meet your standards. Me, I just can't put my finger on it. It's like why? Because it should be. It's Brimo. I mean, guy wrote Joker. I mean, Noel.
They don't.
Did he write them or just draw them?
I
And
think
now
he
he's writing.
I think he wrote in both Noel.
Oh,
if
okay.
I'm
I didn't
right.
realize
I think
that.
he just wrote for Joker. I thought.
The Joker one-shot?
Or was that Azzarello who he wrote in?
That's Azzarello,
and,
yeah.
Did the art. Okay.
Yes. Yeah, what book were we just talking about? I'm sorry, I blanked out for a second there.
We are Robin.
Okay, We Are Robin. I'm like, I have a wait.
It's getting
No, I
very
don't.
late, especially your time.
We Are Robin. The main issue that I have with it, there are three. Number one, to get it out of the way, I think the artwork is just a very sketchy, sort of skewed 90s, sort of generic, run-of-the-mill art style. So many of the backgrounds just aren't well developed. It just comes across as very flat and hurried to me. Secondly, character development. I don't care about any of the characters, so, that leads into the third point. The stakes aren't there for me, and they do what I feel is a very poor job of creating authentic tension. Like, for example, in the most recent issue, and in my review I mentioned this in a little bit more detail, I'm going through and generically flipping through the pages and reading. They're trying to diffuse all these bombs. Then I get to a panel where there's this girl vomiting and weeping, and I'm like, oh, there are the stakes that I was probably supposed to be feeling for the last 10 pages that I didn't feel at all, but now all of a sudden she's vomiting and weeping. I kind of totally missed this. So I went back and thought, maybe, I read it wrong. Going down, there were just, no actual triggers for you to feel that tension. There were no panels or words that really accurately conveyed the stakes in order for you to build up to these characters having this cathartic release. Just bad storytelling.
Right. Well, that's unfortunate, but I guess, they put out so many Gotham titles, it feels like there's always going to be some bad ones in the mix there.
Red Hood and Arsenal. I'm sorry.
Speaking of Red Hood, I just want to bring up the point. I still feel that my ending to Batman Eternal would have been a better ending. Just laying it out there.
Agree. I totally agree. But, yeah, it would have been a nice twist, but it just would have ruined their current attempt to make Red Hood sort of a good guy.
Which is preposterous.
Right.
Well, he can do
functioned
it.
so much better. Go ahead.
If they're gonna, they can do it. It's just like they're going into it kind of half-assing it. If you're gonna make him kind of like this fringe guy, make him like the Punisher. I mean, just do it.
Go all the way.
Now, yeah, go all the way. You can be somewhat of a good guy, but anti-hero, whatever. But just if you're gonna do that, go for it. Don't go in there with one arm behind your back, and he's doing the slapstick stuff with Arsenal. It's just Liddell's killing him. I'm sorry, I don't want to get another rant here, but if you're gonna do it, I'd say do it, and I think it can work. But you gotta commit to it. Yeah.
I agree with that.
So are we all agreed that ultimately Batman has to be Bruce Wayne, right? You can't pull a Wally West and go for decades with someone else being Batman.
I think you can do it. I mean,
You think you could do
Black
it?
Mirror proves you can do it. But I know I said it, Josh, you said it. It's gotta be. It can't be like a mimic. It can't be like Dick Grayson pretending to be that Bruce Wayne type of Batman. It's gotta be genuine. And I kind of lost my train of thought. But it can be. It can be done. Like I said, there's Black Mirror is just an example of it can happen.
Creatively, I agree. I think it can be done, that a publisher can substitute Bruce Wayne for somebody else for a prolonged period of time if it's well executed. And frankly, I don't want to... If it's Dick Grayson, probably. I think that would really be the only true long-term candidate if you were going to have one. Well, maybe not. One of the former Robins, let's just say. But even with that, I guess the way I would temper that a bit would be to say that for the long term, I think generally when you think of Batman, there's never going to be a replacement. There is the Batman, that is Bruce Wayne, and then there are those who are, Batman among those who are more successful than others at doing it. For example, you have Dick Grayson, you have Damian Wayne taking a night in the bat suit. You have then there are the pretenders. There's like 3 levels: the Batman, and then there the Batmen, sort of, or a Batman, and then there are the pretenders. And you have like Jean Paul Valley, guys that just really didn't uphold the essence of the mantle down here in the bottom rung. Then up here, you have your characters like Dick Grayson, and at the top you have Bruce Wayne. And these sub-characters, can work for prolonged runs, but it comes down to like anything else. You have to have good, solid creators doing the work to convince the readers to forego Bruce Wayne and still be on board. That's why I know that this Commissioner Gordon run I enjoy, because it's a breath of fresh air and it's something different, but he's in the pretenders category. You don't have a deputized sanctioned Batman that works in the long term, and I think ultimately this story is going to dispel the notion that anybody can just be a Batman. There is only one Batman, and whoever is that Batman has to at least be trying to embody the core components of the character outside of, what's deputized. And that's why I think this Jim Gordon run is going to be concise. And intentionally so. I don't think it's going to... I think they even said it's only going to be like 10 or 11 months. I don't think you could go that much longer with just anybody. I don't think you could do it with Jim Gordon for those reasons.
Right. That's why I'm thinking of like how Wally West replaced the original Flash for decades. And I would be horrified if they tried to do that, something like that. For me, for Batman, it has to be Bruce Wayne eventually again. And I, in my heart of hearts, I like these other characters, but in my heart of hearts, I don't feel that Batgirl or Batwoman or Batwing is really right. Like, I feel like there should only be one. I'll still read them when there's a good run of Batgirl or a good run of any of those characters. I'll read it, but in my heart, I feel like it should just be Batman and maybe one Robin type character or something. And then I like things like Red Hood, that is a failed experiment of Batman. But
and whether you go 3 months with a side character or you go 2 years, the key is when you're writing whoever is playing the role of Batman,
right,
they have to embody certain attributes from the perspective of the criminals in Gotham and some of the peers. There have to be certain attributes embodied that character can convey. But you also, and this is where it gets tricky, Batman, as Bruce Wayne, is the Batman. That is the voice of Batman. When you have Dick Grayson in the cowl, his Batman has to still be Batman-esque in all the important ways, but it has to sound like Dick Grayson, to the reader. And that's where Grant Morrison, I thought, did an excellent job, where Tony Daniel failed miserably, is when you're writing Dick Grayson as Batman, one of those writers, I could tell the difference between the two subtly, but still was sold enough on Dick Grayson as Batman to buy into the adventure. The other one, unless he was out of costume, I would have no clue that it wasn't Bruce Wayne. And that's a problem, too. You can't just put somebody in there and then just write Batman the same. Right. Which is why I go back to there's only really one Batman, and it's Bruce.
It takes a writer who understands the subtleties and the layers of making someone else Batman to make that interesting. And I feel like with any of these characters, part of the excitement of them is waiting for Bruce Wayne to come back as Batman. If he wasn't ever going to come back, the excitement would go away after a while for me.
One thing I'll give Scott Snyder in this particular run, which I think is wildly creative, I know that you had some difficulty with some of the exposition in the most recent issue, feeling a little bit choppy to you, Damien. I felt a more natural flow myself. That's just a personal take. But the one thing that I will give him is that he didn't pull a stunt like, is Bruce Wayne dead? They're doing it in a way where you see the end game and you know that Bruce Wayne's still there. It's just, how is he going to become Batman again? The journey's taking us there. It's just interesting to see how it gets there.
Yeah, and I think Snyder did a brilliant move by playing with Bruce Wayne's brain and taking the trauma out. I think that's part of why I'm doing this vlog cast right now, because it really does ask, what is Batman all about? You know, it's his trauma in his brain. Is that what makes him Batman? Apparently so, but we'll be exploring that more in future issues, I guess.
The way he did that was so incandescently brilliant. I can't even put it in. I can't put it away more complimentary than that. And that's kind of where, like, sometimes I've mentioned in videos that I've done that the Batman title, not that it's flawless, but it's on such a pedestal. I feel sometimes we're holding it to such a high standard that it's difficult for it to live up to that standard. And I give it so much credit because that's the one Bat book where I'm like, no matter whether the issue's lesser or more than what I expect from Snyder and Capullo, I'm always going to get something that's inspired. You know, it's always going to be, whether it works and is well executed or not, it's inspired. And that was among, outside of maybe the Court of Owls and certain elements of some of his other story, that's one of the most inspired Batman decisions I've maybe ever seen. I thought it was brilliant.
It kind of put it in like another way. It's, you know, it's kind of like the sports teams where it's like either you win a championship or you're a total failure. Where some people might see like the Batman title, if it's not perfect, it's crap. And you're right. That's totally an unfair way to look at it, because I mean, an average Scott Snyder story is still way better than, you know, some other folks. You know.
This last Bat Week proves that there's a lot of garbage out there. Batmite was terrible. Batman Beyond didn't entertain me whatsoever. Injustice is starting to fall flat as the story becomes repetitive. Well, there was one other Bat title that I was vastly disappointed. Detective Comics, that goes without saying.
Right.
Yeah, it was a very bad Bat
And
Week.
you're not reading the Arkham Knight books, right?
I am actually reading the
Oh, you
Arkham
are?
Knight books. I'm just not really reviewing them
I
that often.
Are you not liking them as much as Luke and I am?
I actually liked the first issue of Genesis a good bit. And I think I might be mistaken. I apologize if I am. I believe I mentioned something about Arkham Knight Genesis, and I won't count them.
Yeah.
My Think Bat six-pack reviews, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not disliking the Batman Arkham Knight series, but I'm not relishing in it either. I guess my stance is very moderate on it.
So we had a comment a while ago from Gore Vidal, who said Sean Connery would have made a great Bruce Wayne. I don't know if I want to get into that, because I don't know. But
Robin, what are you doing there?
The British part, I guess, if he could get rid of his accent when he was young, maybe. He's got a good cheekbones for it. And then he says, it's surprising to me that there hasn't been more romance in Wayne's life. Unlike Matt Murdock, whose desire for women is a prominent part of his story, usually to his detriment.
And I'm
Bruce
glad
Wayne
they
Batman
did.
has femme fatale roster that any man would kill or be killed for. So do you guys wish there was more romance in Bruce's life?
No.
No. And I'll touch on this, and I'll defer to you, Josh. The way you don't do it was early in the New 52, where literally like every title had like a different Bruce love connection. It was like too convoluted. Josh, there you go.
You just took the words right out of my mouth. I think he had 3 at one time. I think in The Dark Knight he had that Russian piano chick that got killed by Mad Hatter. Yep. He had the evil, villainous Detective Comics chick whose sister, or maybe it was her, I can't quite remember, was in with the Penguin.
Or something.
Yeah. And then what was the other one? There was a third one. Maybe you can remember, Luke.
I'm trying to remember all 3, because the Russian. Who were they?
Yeah, I know.
Either way,
I know there was
way too many, and they were all at the same time.
Right.
And all of those were in the Snyder book, right? They were all in the other books, I guess.
All in the other. One was in Dark Knight, Detective.
There was only 2. Maybe there was only 2, but they were right at around the same time.
Yeah.
And I mean, really, if you look through Batman's history, he actually has more romantic affairs and affections than one might suspect. effect, you know,
Right.
dating back to Silver St. Cloud and Julie Madison, Vicky Vale, Selena Kyle, Chandra Kinsolving, you know, and during the whole Nightfall saga. Vesper Fairchild was murdered. Sasha Bordeaux was his bodyguard. I think I mentioned Selena Kyle,
Right.
the Russian pianist lady. There was somebody right in between Silver St. Cloud and Vicky Vale, too, whose name's escaping me. But
Who was the
Talia,
one in-
I'm going to forget
Talia?
Talia Ghul.
And who was the one who was in RIP? What was her name?
Oh yeah, the ambassador from
Yeah. Turned out to
hold
be in the
on
Black
here.
Glove too. The Black Glove and
Yeah. I remember. I just can't quite recall her name. But okay, Black Glove Girl.
yeah. It's up. I mean, look.
He's
Keep
got
going
it.
on.
The
Awesome.
ones that really work for me are Catwoman and Talia. I like it when he mixed up with, you know, a really screwed up relationship.
And then we have
generally
Chase Meridian.
incapable of succeeding, or even coming close to succeeding in a relationship.
Then there's what's the name of Veronica Vreeland in the animated series? I mean, I know that doesn't really count in our conversation of books.
No, sure,
but
anything
it's just
counts.
sort of more side notes. We have Chase Meridian in Batman Forever. We have Rachel in Batman Begins. And The Dark Knight. We have Rachel with two faces.
Yeah.
We have hot Tom Cruise's wife, Katie Holmes, or ex-wife, excuse me, Katie Holmes, and then, well, cute. Maybe not hot, cute. And then we have, who was it in The Dark Knight? I can never remember her name. It was the one actor's sister, Gyllenhaal, isn't it?
Maggie Gyllenhaal.
Maggie Gyllenhaal. Yeah, that's who it was in The Dark Knight. So, he not only has love interests, he has multiple versions of the same love interest. How many of us can say that?
Jet. Jezebel Jet.
Jezebel Jet. There we go.
Sorry.
So I feel like we got at least through a good dozen or more there.
So there you go, Gore Vidal. You have just missed Batman's sex life, but it's there to be found. Someone asks about asks what about Terry McGinnis, aka Batman Beyond? Does he feel like Batman to you guys? I haven't explored enough Batman Beyond to have a feeling of that. And of course now it isn't Terry McGinnis. That's kind of, that still has Bruce Wayne in it, and you get your old Bruce Wayne, which is fun for me.
He, you know, I talked about my scale. There's the Batman, there are what I would call a Batman or the Batman, and then there are the Pretenders. I'd probably put Terry McGinnis in the middle of that scale. Really, anybody other than Bruce Wayne, the most they can aspire to in my, you know, pyramid of Batman,
Right.
is the middle rung. Because there's always Bruce right there at the peak, at the point. But in the middle rung, yeah, I'll give Terry McGinnis his props and throw him right in the middle.
I mean, it's fun to think of how Batman would continue the legacy. I'm very uncomfortable with the idea of him endlessly cloning himself and giving himself the mental traumas. Although I think that's going to come into play in the current storyline.
Which that's
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that. I had that.
It's a very clever idea. It's just disturbing.
Oh yeah.
It makes Batman way more warped in my mind than I even had thought of him before. To do this endlessly to clones of himself.
They certainly didn't reveal the machine for no reason, no.
Right.
So, something's happening. Or
Well,
maybe
I
it's
feel
a
like
red herring.
It could be a red herring, I suppose. I'll be very surprised if it is. Well, I feel like we've covered a lot of ground, and I can't think of any more ground to cover on this particular subject. Are you guys good for stopping here? With this elegant way of stopping? Anyone have some final thoughts? Or just Batman is good. Read more Batman.
Batman is good. Yeah.
Okay, everyone.
There's a whole lot of Batman out there, but it is a good time to be a Batman fan.
Yeah. You just have to be willing to sift through it, I suppose, and say, okay, here's something that's not good, but there is more good stuff, and keep playing with it.
Right. And I
Feels
guess
that way with
maybe
comics.
I should elaborate. Yeah, I should elaborate a little bit too. In that, you know, I've made the comment tonight a couple times that the Bat books, there's a lot of subpar Bat books right now, but I don't want to seem negative because there are also a number of fantastic Bat-related titles for new readers or current comic readers who want to get into Batman to get into. Scott Snyder's Batman run is one of the most critically acclaimed Batman runs that we've had in a long time, if not ever. It's starting to get into that iconic plethora of books that we'll look back on 50 years from now, I think, with fondness. I think even as time goes on, we'll look back at stories like Zero Year that aren't as heralded as some of his other works with more fondness. Peter Tomasi is overshadowed by Snyder, you know, in the public eye. But he's going to be taking the pages of Detective Comics here shortly, and that's going to make that book a great book. Everything that I said about Detective Comics being so ill-fated, that's being completely taken care of because that creative team is gone, and they're going to put a much better creative team in its place. Robin, Son of Batman, even with Tomasi's loss, has been surprisingly fresh. And I think Patrick Gleason has done much better considering some of the other trends we've seen with writer-artist combinations. Gotham by Midnight's certainly a book that I would start from the beginning and read. I wouldn't pick it up right away. I would start with the first trade, which I don't think's out yet. I could be wrong. But that's certainly something that if you start from the beginning and continue reading, you're going to thoroughly enjoy, I feel, especially artistically. Grayson might be the best Bat book coming out right now. And I mean that. If I had to rank them currently, you know, I did my top 20 Bat list last year. I'll probably do it again this year. And I would not be at all surprised to see the book Grayson take 4 or 5 of those top 20 spots because every single month it's just been a rock-solid month. It feels like it gets better, better, and better. Catwoman isn't for everybody. It's for, you know, those folks. It's the thinking man's Batman. It's like the Godfather of the Batman books. You know, it's like it's not, you know, it's not. You don't chug it. It's you sip it. Fine wine, but it's certainly better than it was with Ann Neseni.
Oh, that is such a perfect analogy.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Trying to think of the other Bat books that are out that are good because there are plenty of them. Batman 66. If you grew up with Adam West and with this slightly different version of Batman than what we see today, but you have a fondness for that, I mean, it really captures the spirit of that book quite well. People have varying opinions of Harley Quinn. Some people love it. And I'm trying to think of what I'm leaving out. Some people love the new Batgirl. I personally, very apprehensive to recommend it because, well, I wouldn't even recommend it. I don't find it very good at all. But, you know, there are those people that swear by that, you know, this new wave Batgirl style. And I'm probably leaving some stuff out that's really good. So, I mean, it's definitely split down the middle. Even though there's a lot of excess baggage and fat that I feel could be trimmed off, at the same time, there's still a plethora of very good Bat titles.
We also live in a golden age of comic book reprints, of collected editions. It used to be like this was the only thing you could get, this Batman's best stories over told or something. Now you can get all the collected Neil Adams stories, and then you could read the Frank Miller stuff, and then you could read Hush. You could read all the sort of classic moments throughout Batman's time and compare them. Get the Batman Chronicles and read the 1940s stuff. So it's pretty amazing to think, you know, given how comics used to be, that you can just get all the best stuff, and there's so much best Batman stuff to get. I need to go back and read all the Grant Morrison, actually. I've only read parts of it.
Speaking of trades, I was thinking about something the other day. If they would... They publish these trades, and some people that have already picked up the original issues don't pick up the trades all the time. Like myself, unlike Luke, I don't pick up as many of the trades unless I don't own them, or unless the books in that story are books I just don't want to be touching. Like Death of the Family. You know, some of those early issues are actually pretty highly valued, so I don't want to be thumbing through them, so I have to trade. But I feel like, and this is an idea, you guys can say that I'm psychotic and out of my mind, and that's fine. But one thing I'm always disappointed with trades right now, I don't feel like I'm getting enough additional bonus content at all. I'm getting a couple pictures and layout panels. You know, here's the creative process, and I see 2 pages. And, you know, it's like for $24.99 for a hardcover, $16.99 for a trade paperback. I just feel like one way that they could do this, and I think it would be a great idea, is that every single trade comes with, in the back, as additional content, an original trade-only published story by a separate creative team. And then, annually, you'll have a book that's published that's called The Extras. And you could have Batman, The Extras, you know, Superman, The Extras. That way, for somebody like me, I don't pick up the trades. I can still get those extra stories collected in an edition at the end of the year. So then every time you get a trade, you have an original story in there with it to entice you to buy.
Such a good point. We were talking about this before we came on air. I'm reading Volume 6 of Batman, $24.99, and you know what you get for the bonus content for the trade? 4 variant covers.
Nothing?
4 variant covers. That's it. Great story. Don't get me wrong. The stories in here, very good. But for $24.99, other than the single issues you get, I'm only getting 4 variant covers. Or if you look at Batman and Robin, where Tomasi actually did the script and his plea for his pitch to take over the series. I thought that was pretty cool for as far as extra content. But yeah, you're right. Lately, yeah, you're getting variant covers, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah, the trades. Well, I don't think the trades are designed anymore for people who read the comics and then want the trades too. I think they're just like another way to read the comic, and they don't put as much effort in making the trades special as they used.
I agree with that, which is kind of why I'm saying that if they would put some original content in there, you might be able to appeal to both a little bit more.
And I like getting some fancy edition of something that I really loved later on. But those regular hardback trades now do seem kind of skimpy. Kind of wait for some kind of deluxe edition.
I was thrilled with the background material in the hardcover of Batman and Gothic. They had Grant Morrison's full proposal to DC Comics. They had some of the original page layouts. I think, if I'm remembering correctly, on the actual proposal, there's like a lot of internal thoughts. Like Grant Morrison's giving his pitch, and he's talking about parts of the creative process that he's struggling through. You know, it was a very candid set of bonus features in the back of that book. And it kind of got me thinking, boy, I wish I saw more of this type of thing.
Yeah, I do like that stuff. And I like when they give a lot of the artists initial sketches and all of that. But yeah, I think they probably save it for those deluxe editions now. That might be part of their thing. So you can buy it 3 times.
You can. I'm going to be getting that black and white version of Black Mirror. I am buying that.
Is that just the pencils or just the black?
Yeah, I think it's just Jacques pencils. I think.
That would be cool to see.
Yeah. So that would be single issues hardcover with that. That would be 3 times.
With those black and white editions too, I struggle with there are certain artists that I want to see in black and white, and then there are some artists that I feel like they desperately need the color to bring their artwork to life. Like, for example, The Dark Knight Returns, it has a noir edition, but I just do not feel like the artwork in that book would work favorably without the colors. Same with, I think, The Long Halloween. I love Tim Sale's artwork, do not get me wrong, but I've seen some of the black and white stills, and it just doesn't translate without the coloring. I would love to see Jock's work on the printed page, though, just by itself. So I agree, that would be a really outstanding pickup.
Yeah, there are some not Batman comics, Jack Kirby comics that I have a bazillion editions of, but you can go crazy after some point. There'll be even more versions of that Jock art for you to pick up later.
They'll start releasing editions with colors and no pencils.
Right.
See the perfect colors.
That's Hollingsworth. That'd be literally like Hollingsworth on witches. Just
That right? You could
let's
do that.
Here you go.
You could do a book of that.
Be flipping through. It's like it's a bunch of stained pages. What did I pay for here? With some random word bubbles.
It's an abstract art book.
Yeah.
Okay. Are we good to go? Or Luke, did you have anything more you wanted to toss in there?
Nah, this was a blast. I know we're all busy with schedules, so if this can ever line up again, this was fun.
Yeah, I'm really appreciative of you guys staying up very late your time to do this with me. And someday we'll do it again. To the audience, it took us an hour to get us all online. It was so hard. Google has changed things and tortured us in bizarre ways. So hopefully
next time we have ourselves equipped. I have my headset here, and it'll be right next to the router. We're good to go.
Okay, good night, everyone. Happy bat reading.
Take care.